Yes, our focus is still on women. We did tell you at the beginning of the program, they've taken over the show today. Yeah, and for good reasons. We want to celebrate them. We talked about those in politics. Let's talk about the people in the corporate spaces. And we've been joined in the program right here in our Lagos studio by Mrs. Victoria Wadoka, Corporate Communications, Public Affairs and Sustainability Lead at Nestle, Nigeria. Also joining us via Zoom from London is Bukola Okiji, Head of Projects, PMO, Nation Health Services. She's also the founder and lead tutor at ABP MX and project director, AFWL and Digital Communication Projects. A lot of titles, and I like it. We'll break down all of this and how much money is paid to. Just joking. Let's come to you, Victoria, on this particular day we're celebrating women. We've had you, and we kind of, it was literally like a master class the last time we spoke to you. But I do not want to drag both of you into politics, but there's no way we will have women and not comment on what's playing out in the country. So I'm going to ask a broad, an overview kind of question. What do you see that has happened in the Senate and what your reaction is?
Well, that's a very interesting question in the sense that it seems to be a microcosm of what Nigeria is like, and unfortunately, it might be the same picture across Africa and globally at some levels. There is the will, I think, there is the will to include women in politics, in business, in the corporate world, but there is also a resistance that comes from long-held beliefs around what women should do and what women should not do, or what women can do and what women cannot do. In this case of Natasha and the Senate President, the important question to ask is, what is stopping us from investigating it properly? That way we can see who's right, who's wrong. Let justice be done, and let justice be seen to be done. I think that's what's important. Yes, there is a lot of pro-Natasha activists and anti-Natasha speeches that I'm hearing out there, but the important thing is, only a person who goes through a thing can tell you about it. I've been in the corporate world. I could tell you some stories. I'm sure a number of women can tell you some stories. But the important thing is there protection? Is there a system? Is there a process for finding out what really happened and what is going on right now? I think that's what I want to say. It's important that justice is done and justice is seen to be done, because it's setting a precedent. Tomorrow it could be anybody. There is a precedent, and we need to address it, and address it very intentionally.
Let's come to you, Bukola, on this one before we get to the corporate issues. People have said that what played out, for the record, the Senate actually has passed their verdict on parliamentary conduct. Nothing has been done on sexual harassment allegation. So people have said this kind of it has a feeler of why victims or alleged victims don't come out to talk about their harassment and all of that. In fact, women are even divided on the issue as well. So just like I asked her, I want to find out your general comments on this issue before we get to corporate conversations.
Thank you so much. I think Miss Victoria actually covered it. There are some cultural and systemic barriers for Nigerian women and also for women across the globe in terms of what we face in leadership, especially in male-dominated spaces. And with regards to what's happened to Senator Natasha, it's quite sad, and it's quite prominent that it actually happened during International Women's Month, because I think this is an opportunity for us to actually share what we are facing, not just in the corporate world, but in the systematic system in terms of what's happening with leadership and why women are seeming to want to break the glass ceiling. I think Ms. Victoria actually covered it. I think we just want justice, and this is actually setting a precedent for what and how women will be treated in a workplace.
So let's just dive right into the workplace, and I'll come back to Madam Victoria in the studio. So you've had your experience or experiences, and I'm talking over decades now of experiences in the corporate segment of the economy. I imagine things have gotten better over the years. And we're also trying to see how we can borrow from the corporate world and put in governance, because whatever happens in governance will still affect the corporate world, because the policies being made will affect you eventually. And if you don't have representation, whatever policies happen there, will not seem representative, at least eventually. So what can we borrow from the corporate space for governance and for the society at large? Is it that the corporate world just realized, wait a minute, women can do this better, right? And if we even want to make more money, let's get more women in. So it was an existential issue, and they just woke up and said, if we want to survive, we need to do what is right. Did the corporate world get to that point? And is it something we can borrow for the other sectors of our lives?
Okay, so I'll say to that that there have been studies conducted, and I think the one, which is why I kept this to read the notes here, a recent study by McKinsey, which showed that when women are involved, the companies who promote gender balance and involve women in their businesses actually do 25% better than others, right? We don't have such data in Nigeria, right? But globally, this is what is seen to be the case. So many organizations globally have signed non-discriminatory policies, they've agreed, they've made policies, they've created processes, non-discriminatory processes to ensure that there is equity. But what do we see? We still see that women don't seem to make it all the time to the CEO levels, to the C-suite, right? You find women entering the workplace. There are some things, and I think that we will discuss them in the course of this morning, that prevent women from getting to the next level and to the next level as quickly as a man would. There are some cultural issues, there's some access to support, there's also the reproductive issues, okay, because women want to have children, you know, they shouldn't do one and not the other. So some of these things limit women's ability to climb the corporate ladder and get to the C-suites as fast as possible. But is there progress being made? Yes. There have been campaigns. The He for She is an example, for instance. So I think we're making progress. There's more awareness. And I think that we're achieving more parity when it comes to wages, right? And we're trying to make the workplaces more transparent. The employment, the recruitment processes, we're trying to make them more transparent. And we're trying to look at merit, not gender. That is important. But what corporate organizations have done as well is that they've looked at the system and seen that, look, this is cute, and if we don't do anything differently, we're not going to come out of this. I mean, think about it. Data that is available now shows that if we continue at this pace, it will take us another 5 generations to achieve gender parity. 5 generations of women, that's my daughter's 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 daughter, to get to gender parity if we continue at this pace. So if you ask me, is progress being made? I'll answer, well, kind of. So we're taking action,
yeah.
and maybe that's why this year's theme is around accelerating action. We need to look at the areas where we've made progress. There are policies that have been put in place. There is governance. There are laws that have been promulgated and all of that. We just need to work on them. There are pacts that corporates have signed onto. There are nations who have signed onto the Non-Discriminatory Act as well, and we just need to implement those actions. I think that's where we need to go.
I need to also know, on behalf of the audience, what parity looks like. And maybe I'll go to Anne on this. You can also chime in eventually. What does parity really look like? Because for some people, they'll say, I've tried now, I've given the little 25% or 30% I can, right? And some will say, well, it should be more than that. Even the 25 or 30% is not even being achieved by a lot of organizations. So what does parity really look like in the context of competence? And I know this is a debate we're going to have all day. In the context of competence, and in fact, people that are available, some believe it means call them from inside their rooms, that come and occupy this position, right? But I'd like you to speak to what parity means in the context of all of those other factors that have been raised time and again. Anna.
Thank you. Okay.
Sorry, Bukola. Apologies. I need to get Anna out of my...
There we go. It's okay. It's okay. For me, I feel it actually starts with the culture in the organization. It starts from outside the organization and inside the organization. And I love that Ms. Victoria touched on some of the policies that have now been introduced and being put inside the system. However, it has to go throughout the organization, from the very top, the executives, down to the middlemen, down to, the employees. For me, parity looks like people holding spaces, women being allowed, not even allowed, being given the space to speak up, women being given the confidence. Women have confidence already, and women are empowered, but expanding that for them to be able to hold spaces, to be able to share ideas, to be able to be listened to. Culturally and in social norms as well. Just like Ms. Victoria mentioned in terms of traditional beliefs, those are still limited for women in terms of women roles, in terms of domestic spaces, and it does make it difficult to transition sometimes in society and into the corporate space. Parity for me means a woman being in a boardroom, being given that space to talk about and to be able to share ideas and not to be shut down, and to amplify our voice. And that's why it's very, very important that we have male allies supporting us through this movement. I mean, this movement has been going on for decades and decades and years. And I think, yes, we are making progress, just like Ms. Victoria mentioned, we are making progress, but I feel like now in this day and age, I would expect, and I'm so grateful that on Saturday, everybody was amplifying the importance of women holding spaces in the society. However, there is still a large gap between us talking about it and the action. And that's why I love the theme for this year, which is accelerating action, meaning that, yes, we put in those policies. We're happy that these things are, are being spoken about, but what about the actions in the corporate places? It isn't just about creating policies, but actually actioning out those policies so women can be seen, they can be heard, and they can feel the confidence and be given that space to truly thrive. I mean, currently, if we're talking about education and we're talking about, the economic disparities, there are 60% of out-of-school children in Nigeria that are girls. There are limited access to opportunities. Women also earn less than 23% than men in the workspace in Nigeria. I don't want to talk about what's happening in the global space because I believe that is moving along. We're talking about it and they're creating policies. So I'm really, really passionate about this space, and I want male allies to understand in the corporate space that when they see a woman in the boardroom, that they give her that space to be able to express her ideas, to be able to express her opinions, and to be listened to and not to be mansplained to. That makes sense.
Madam Victoria, let's talk about something both of you have highlighted, and I'm going to go to her in a moment, and that has to do with, let's use a central word, pay parity on one hand. The other hand is availability. It is not a woman's fault that she will get married, she will have children at those times she may not be at the office, because this seems to affect how she's eventually scored or seen to be available when she's needed at the places of work, wherever it is at the end of the day. So if we take that issue of availability and what nature does in terms of playing its role on the woman in speaking to corporate, how do we marry them such that we can begin to make a case for women?
I'd like to, just add a little bit around what you're talking about, parity. Parity is about looking at representation, right? If we think about the fact that we're almost at par, 50%, 50%, 50% female, 50% male, right? Almost, some fractions that make the difference. Let's think about representation in every sphere, politics, corporate world, socially, representation. Now, let's talk about equity as well. So for a long time, women have been relegated to certain roles that were thought to be gender sensitive, right? One of them, of course, is childbearing, right? Could you provide the support that women need to re-enter the workspace after they've had children? Must they leave the workspace because they've had children? Can you provide the support they need? So there's access to that support. In the organization I work for right now, we do have some support, right? So you have the baby feeding rooms, you have the creches, so you can bring your child to work and go feed your child when you have to. So that's a support system. And because of that, many people who work in my organization do not have to leave work because they've had kids, right? So do women have access to that support? Is that support, is that equity? You give everybody what they need to achieve what they can achieve. Now, she's talked about, Bukola has talked about how many young children, girls, are out of school. How do they even begin to compete? in the corporate world? Are they taught financial literacy? Do they know that they can aspire to be engineers, doctors? Do they know that they can aspire? Are they given the opportunity to aspire? So the important thing is to ensure that in this world that we live in this economy that we live in, that we're giving every opportunity to everyone who is a member of this community to contribute to the growth, because only one part cannot do it. Now, equity is about the fact that women need access to education. They need access to safe spaces. They need access to the support systems they need when they're raising kids so they can stay in the workspace. So providing that support is the first thing that we can begin to do as a nation to create the opportunities for women to achieve their optimum potential. Because do we have potential? Yes. Recently, we see that many financial institutions have started to appoint women. Have the banks failed? I don't think so.
Chairman and MDs.
Voila. You know, they're moving forward. If you look at the story of Fidelity Bank and what progress has been made since the current MD took over. So it's not as if we're failing, right? So give everybody the opportunity they need. It's about equity. You know, a curious thing happens. Like now we're talking about Women's Day, encouraging women development and all of that. Men are beginning to say, what about us? What about us? And I always say, look at the data. Data never lies. Look at the data. If you look at the data, then you stop feeling sentimental about it. Because come to think about it, they're your sisters, your wives, your cousins, your colleagues at work. This is what we're talking about. Behind every data, behind every situation, behind every thing that we want to talk about, there's a story. There is a person, there's a human behind that. And if we talk about human rights, every human has a right to aspire to go as high as they want to go. And nothing should stop them and nothing should limit them. Everybody should get what they need.
Bukola, Bukola, let me come to you as well on, I just want practical, she's giving some practical example. Another practical example I'd like you to maybe give us a practical example on this particular issue has to do with male allies without being misconstrued. Because in politics, in corporate places, you need the support of the men who are quote unquote in the majority to be able to access certain maybe levels in those offices. Because I don't think the competence of women is in doubt, but some of these structures that are in place that limits women to be able to live to their full potential is also a problem. So how can women have male allies without being misconstrued?
It's a very good question. I'm very blessed that I work in a system where it is very, very aware, and we're very aware. The men around us are very aware of this gender parity. And we love that we are utilizing this space with women supporting one another, and we're demanding representation in decision-making, tables. And, in terms of male allies, gender inclusion is not just a woman's issue. And I love Ms. Victoria talking about the representation, talking about the women that are in society that often men do not, I don't want to generalize, but don't see, starting from their mothers, starting from their sisters, starting from, with their daughters as well. What does society look like for those women around you? We need to start this societal transformation. Men actually must start being active, supporting, advocating for gender support, gender equality. It's very, very important. So what does male look like? In as much as I talk about holding space, it's about having those uncomfortable conversations with those women that are around you, having a conversation in terms of what do they like, what would they like, how would they like them to support? Like, take for instance, a couple of years ago, 4 years ago, I decided that I wanted to do a conference, a virtual conference during COVID 4 years ago on a social media platform. And we brought around 40 women just to talk about the issues that are concerning women in society. We got approximately up to like nearly a dozen men talking about how it affects their wife, how it affects their children. That's where we start from. And we did the same, and we've been doing the same for the past 4 years, just creating space, not just talking about it, but putting action into place and letting men understand. Because I think what it is the ignorance of it, that they don't really understand how society see women, how we try to push ourselves. And if we just get that extra push from them, it would really go a very, very long way.
So let me try to put, not men on the spot now, but let me try to flip the script a bit. From your experience now, for the systems, and okay, don't let me say men now, for the systems that seem to be averse to having women take the lead or encouraging women, supporting them, what do you sense is the reason? Do you think it's a threat? Do you think it's insecurity? Do you think it's lack of information? Do you think it's spiritual? What exactly do you think is wrong here? Because as some say, it looks like data supports it, right? Or at least you can't keep doing the same things and expect a different result. So why not try this? But from your experience, what do you think is principally responsible for those systems, not men now? Those systems?
No, I like to say that in my experience, I've had, I have a great support system that includes men and women. So I can tell you that personally, I feel like it's all men. No, I don't feel so. But the few people that I've had conversations with, I find that to a great level is cultural. It's just this is the way we've always done it. Why do you want to change things? And that resistance to change, right? And Bukola said it very well, is the perception of who a woman is supposed to be. So you've grown up or you've been taught that this is the way it's supposed to be. But if you see men who grew up in a different environment where their mothers taught them differently, their fathers taught them differently, they feel differently. So I have great friends. I mean, most of my greatest allies in the corporate world are men. Right? And they see, they understand, right? So the thing is, I've also had a very interesting experience. So I was sitting in a cab, and a woman crossed the street. I mean, she shouldn't have passed at that time, I understand. And the comments the man made took me aback. And he didn't know who the woman was. He had no idea where she was coming from. And he said, that's how you women, generalizing, and said, oh, I have your type at home. So it's that generalization, it's that cultural thing that is a problem. And the only way to solve a cultural problem is by sensitization, because sometimes there's an unconscious bias, right? And we talk about that. We talk about having emotional intelligence, even in the workplace, to look at it. Sometimes there's tokenism, right? Or let's just put women there. And that's something that we say absolutely no to. Don't just put us there. Give us the opportunity. Help us, allow us to compete on the same grounds. And then let's win if we win. I don't want to be there because, okay, I'm just a token, right? So I think that to a great extent, it is cultural. And the only way to do it, or to come through that, is to have those difficult conversations and to create more awareness. If it's in the forefront, then you can begin to address it and really look at the data and not the sentiments.
Let's wind down. Let's come to Bukola. I think we've talked about men helping women, supporting women. Let's talk about women supporting women. I would like your comment on that, because with the Senator Natasha Akpoti's stories, we've seen women comment, and you're just listening. Okay, exactly where this is coming from. Some have said, don't be too emotive. That place is not for this and that for that. Some have even started to argue about, whether the people that are more attractive are more prone to sexual. I've heard all shade, and these are coming from women, literally. So talk about women supporting women. Are women really supporting women in corporate spaces?
I strongly believe that there are women that support women. I am sitting here because a woman has supported me to get to where I am today. I am also blessed to have male allies as well. Yes, there's this notion that women don't support women, and I'm living proof that women do support women. I've been in spaces where they do that. I feel like the reason or the notion of that quote, that women don't support women, is yet another form of, I don't want to say the word propaganda, to pit women against women. I think if you look in a corporate space, there are spaces where women do actually want another woman to win. I think sometimes we are pitted against each other, but I think we also need to recognize what the goal is. What is your goal? And also realize that in this life, you can't really walk alone. You need support. So with regards to what's happening with Senator Natasha, I feel if you listen and you read well, the majority are supporting Natasha. And for those, and also one thing you also need to recognize is the errors of those that are speaking against Natasha in terms of maybe social construct, social, environment. The majority that might be speaking against her might not truly understand the nature or the situation that's at hand, how it will affect their daughters, how it affects their granddaughters to come through, and they're only thinking about the present. Because the truth of the matter is, whatever does happen with regards to the full story being coming out,
okay.
The most important thing is that we are actually talking about it, and I'm really pleased about that.
Absolutely. It's an ongoing conversation. We'll continue to spotlight on women and celebrate you as you continue to progress and break these barriers. Bukola Okiji, Head of Projects, PMO, National Health Service, Project Director, AFWL and Digital Community Projects, founder and lead tutor at ABPMX. A lot of titles, by the way.
Thank you.
Victoria Wadoka, Corporate Communications, Public Affairs and Sustainability Lead at Nestle Nigeria, right here in our Lagos city. Thank you so much, ladies, for coming on the program. We appreciate it and wish you happy International Women's Day.
Thank you.
Keep winning.
And you too. Happy International Women's Day to you.
Thank you. That
to all the women in your life.
Yes, all the women in our lives. Thank you. All right, take a quick break. When we come back, and we'll bring you up to speed with what's going on in the city of Port Harcourt. Join us again.